I am 85 years old, and I've decided to record this testimony before my memory starts playing tricks on me. Not because I want to remember everything, no. It's just that there are some things I need to say out loud to myself, perhaps to whoever might listen to this one day. Because I learned too late a truth that no man should carry to the end of his life without truly understanding. My name is Robert Miller. I was born and raised in Brighton in the Forest Hills neighborhood, the son of a factory worker and a homemaker. I married Eleanor at 27 on a March afternoon smelling of rain and jasmine at St. Joseph's Church over in Lakeside. She wore a simple dress, her hair tied back with a white ribbon, and she smiled in a way that made the world seem smaller and more beautiful at the same time. 53 years of marriage. 53 years that, to those looking in from the outside, seemed a rare example of lasting, solid love. But on the inside, I gradually emptied it, without realizing, without intending to, without understanding the magnitude of what I was doing. I worked 41 years at the same company, a construction materials distributor here in the city. I started as an administrative assistant and retired as a logistics manager. I was faithful to my job in the same way I was faithful to my marriage. I woke up early, left before 7, came back at 7 in the evening, sometimes later. I paid the bills on time, didn't drink, didn't gamble, didn't look elsewhere. I thought that was love. I thought that staying was enough, that remaining by a person's side in itself meant truly taking care of them. Eleanor was different from me in almost everything. She found joy in small things, those I barely noticed. She called my name through the rooms of the house with a lightness I only came to understand when that voice ceased to exist forever. She called me to see the color of the sky through the living room window when it turned orange and purple at the end of the day. She called me to taste the cake that was still in the oven, its scent filling the entire kitchen. She called me just to tell me the neighbor had gotten a new dog, or that the basil plant in the backyard had suddenly bloomed. She thought these moments were worth sharing, that everyday life became bigger when lived together. I listened, nodded, gave a faint smile, and went back to what I was doing. The newspaper, bills, work I brought home. There was always something more urgent than the moment she called me. And look, I wasn't a cold man. Don't get me wrong. I loved Eleanor the way I learned one loves. Working for her, being there, not failing with what was concrete, but the love she needed wasn't made of concrete. It was made of presence, of curiosity, of looking into her eyes and asking what was going through her mind. And that kind of love I didn't know how to give. No one had ever taught me, and I never stopped to learn. For many years, our house in St. Teresa's was filled with a voice that spoke my name with genuine affection. Robert, come see this. Robert, would you like some coffee? Robert, are you listening to me? I heard the words, but not the person behind them. There was an enormous difference between the two, and it took me whole decades to understand that. The first sign that something was changing happened about 15 years ago. It was on a typical Monday night. I was sitting on the sofa, eyes on the television, when she appeared at the living room door and simply said, "Dinner's ready, dry," without my name, without the Robert that always came before. I didn't even notice the difference at that instant. I got up, went to the table, ate, and continued the evening as if nothing had happened. Because for me, nothing had actually happened. The food was there, the table was set, the house was functioning as always. What could be wrong? But now, sitting here in this worn wooden chair with the house empty and silence weighing in every corner, I see with a clarity that hurts too much. That was the first night she stopped calling me. It was the beginning of a distancing that I never wanted to see because it was easier not to see. The changes arrive slowly, like leaks that one ignores until the ceiling gives way all at once. She stopped asking me how my day had been. At first I thought she was just tired. Then I convinced myself it was marital maturity, that phase people talk about where the couple no longer needs many words, where silence between two people is comfort, not emptiness. I convinced myself of this for years, but her silence wasn't comfort. It was a response. It was the exact mirror of what I had done with every one of her attempts to get closer to me. Every time she told me something and I nodded without taking my eyes off the screen, she learned that her story didn't deserve attention. Every time she started a sentence and I interrupted her with something practical like, "Did you already pay the credit card bill?" or "You need to call the plumber tomorrow," she learned that her thoughts didn't fit in the space between us. She didn't stop trying suddenly. She stopped gradually, as if removing furniture from a room nobody uses. And I, who should have noticed every attempt that died in the air between us, let it happen without realizing the extent of the damage that was forming beneath the surface of everything. I remember one afternoon about 12 years ago when she was sitting on the porch with a book in her lap, looking at the garden she had planted so carefully over the years. I passed by her, asked if it was going to rain that night. She said she didn't know, and I went back inside, just like that. I didn't ask what she was reading. I didn't ask what she was thinking as she looked at the plants with that distant gaze. I didn't ask anything about her. And she stayed there, quiet, like someone who had learned that her things didn't interest the man she had slept beside for decades. It wasn't malice on my part, never was. It was distraction, it was habit. It was that mistaken belief that love is proven by staying, not by truly being present. I stayed. Every day I stayed, but I wasn't present. And that difference, my friend, that difference is an abyss that can swallow an entire marriage without making a sound. Eleanor was a woman of gentle presence, one of those who don't shout to be heard. She whispered, she invited, she opened doors and waited with the patience of someone who still believes. And I closed those doors one by one, not with force, but with neglect, which is a much crueler way to close them. Because when you close them in anger, the person at least knows you felt something for them. When you close them with indifference, they leave without being sure if they ever truly existed for you. Today, in this house too big for me alone, here in Brighton, with the street noise outside and the absurd silence inside, I catch myself hearing sounds that no longer exist. The soft hum she made while folding clothes on the porch, the clatter of pots and pans in the late afternoon, when the smell of lunch still lingered in the hallway, the sound of my name being spoken with tenderness, as if my presence were a gift. All these sounds are gone, and I only learned their weight when there was no longer any way to hear them back. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. There's one night I can't stop revisiting. It happened about 10 years ago when I returned late from a work dinner. The city was silent as Brighton gets at those hours, that heavy pre-dawn silence that makes you hear your own breath. I entered the house carefully, thought she was already asleep, but found Eleanor sitting at the kitchen table, alone, with a single light on above her. There was a cup of tea in front of her, already cold, and she was looking at nothing, with that way of someone thinking about things that don't fit into simple words. I told her she didn't need to have stayed awake waiting for me, and she replied with a calm, almost distracted voice, "I wasn't waiting, just that." 3 words I didn't know how to hear. At the time, I felt in discomfort I couldn't name. Something inside me recognized there was weight in those words, but instead of pulling that conversation that could have changed everything between us, I said I was tired and went to sleep. Today, I understand what she was saying without saying. It was that she no longer expected to be noticed, that at some point in our life together, she had given up waiting for me to truly arrive, not just with my body, but with my attention, with my care, with my eyes truly turned to her. 2 years later, on a Saturday afternoon when we were returning from St. Louis Market, she asked me a question so softly I almost didn't hear it. Her voice was almost inaudible, as if she already knew the question would die in the air before it was even answered. She said, "Robert, do you ever wonder what I think?" I looked at her, confused, and asked what she meant by that. She shook her head slightly and said it was nothing, never mind. And I did. I put away the shopping bags, turned on the living room fan, and that conversation vanished as if it had never existed. But it did exist. And today I know exactly what Eleanor was asking that sunny afternoon. She wanted to know if I was still curious about her, if the man she shared her life with was still interested in what was happening inside her, in the dreams she nurtured in silence, in the doubts she carried, and what made her laugh or purse her lips in worry before sleeping. She was asking me if she was still seen as a whole, complete person, and not just as a functional part of our daily routine. I responded with a question instead of listening. I moved on instead of pausing. And she learned once again that her inner world found no home in our marriage. After Eleanor passed away, about 3 years ago, I started tidying her things carefully, with that slowness of someone who wants to postpone the inevitable. It was then that I found in the nightstand drawer a floral-covered notebook I had never seen before. I held it in my hand for a long time without opening it, afraid of what might be written there. Finally, I opened it. Most of the notes were simple: recipes, reminders, names of books she wanted to read. But on one of the pages, written in her small, slanted handwriting, there was a sentence that changed something inside me in a way that can no longer be undone. I think he doesn't hear me anymore. That sentence had been written 7 years before she passed. 7 years before. She knew, and she stayed there. She continued to take care of the house. She continued to put food on the table. She continued to sleep beside me. But she already knew she was alone in the marriage. I sat on the floor of her room for a time I cannot measure. I cried the way men of my generation rarely cry, with my whole chest, shamelessly and uncontained. Because suddenly everything became very clear. I had always responded to her words, but never to the loneliness beneath them, never to her need to be known, to be truly seen by the one she chose to spend her life with. I saw the wife, but I didn't see the woman. In the last year of her life, Eleanor fell ill. A serious health problem that came quickly and took over everything with a speed that gave us no time to prepare. And it was during that period that I finally woke up in a way that had never happened before. I cooked for her. I cleaned the house. I accompanied her to every appointment, every exam, every difficult moment. I stayed by her side in a way I'd never been before, completely present, without my phone, without work, without distractions. And it felt good to me. It felt like I was repairing something, fixing what had been crooked for so long. But what I didn't know or didn't want to know is that physical care doesn't undo decades of emotional absence. They are different currencies, not interchangeable. One quiet afternoon, as I adjusted her pillow to make her more comfortable, she held my hand with delicate strength, looked at me and said, "You were always here, Robert," just like that. Without anger, without bitterness in her tone, just a cold, honest observation. And in those words I felt the sentence she wasn't saying out loud, "But you were never truly with me." Being here was not the same as being with her, and it took me 53 years to understand that difference, which seems small, but is enormous. 3 weeks later, Eleanor passed away on a May morning, one of those with that tired, pale sun that Brighton has in autumn. She went peacefully, they told me. I don't know if I believe that in the way they want me to believe. I know she took with her a voice that once spoke my name with genuine tenderness and joy, and that gradually fell silent for lack of someone who knew how to listen to what lay beyond the words. Now I live in this enormous house with my echoes. I walk down the hallway and imagine hearing her footsteps on the wooden floor. I stand in the kitchen and have the feeling that she will appear at the door with a cup of coffee for me, as she did so many times. Sometimes I think I hear my name being called from some distant room in the house, and for a fraction of a second my heart races. But it's just the wind. It's just the silence that with time has learned to take her form. I record this testimony because I can no longer call Eleanor and have her answer me, because I learned that regret that finds no remedy still needs to find a voice. What's left for me is this old voice recorded on a device my grandson brought me telling what I learned too late to make a difference. If you who are listening still have someone by your side who calls your name with affection, please stop everything you are doing right now and listen. Listen not just to the words, listen to the person behind them. Because the day that call stops coming, there's no way to ask for it back.